Let's talk about all kinds of good stuff like the Hopi, the Mayans. Let's talk about the mass awakening that's coming soon. See, the Hopi and the Mayans were basically all the same people. There was a connection that was established through the Anasazi. From the Four Corners area, the Anasazi kind of disappeared, but they were the earlier ancestors of the Mayan and the Hopi. And they both had their prophecies and calendars and stuff like that. I really love my Hopi brothers and sisters and my Mayan brothers and sisters. Now the Mayan had a calendar. They had a calendar that, and everybody was very, very, let's say, had high expectations based on this calendar, which was supposedly indicating that there was something that was going to happen in 2012. And everybody was like, okay, on the edge of their seats and saying, yeah, it's coming in 2012, the end of the world or whatever. And they took it totally wrong. Uh, 2012 was a period which indicated a window. And I think the window probably started around 2007 and went through 2012 and on. Okay. So when I say and on, well, that doesn't indicate a definite time. So there was a window there, and that window is still there. So people should not write that off. That calendar and the Mayans were very, very specific, and they had very strong energy and belief systems, and they were very, very good at mathematical equations, things like that. So that window that I'm talking about is still there. And so we're going to talk about a mass awakening. There is going to be, and probably it is already in the works, that there is a mass awakening happening, and it could be happening right now. Now, see, here's the thing. A lot of these ancient prophecies from the Mayan and the Hopi and others too indicated that there would be something happening with the planet. Okay, now let's remember that the planet is a living organism, just like we are a living organism, and the planet is made up of sacred geometry, just as we are made up of sacred geometry. If you were to look at your aura, or if you were to look at your light body, you would see that you are made up of sacred geometry, and that sacred geometry, the light body forms a star tetrahedron within your aura, within your emanation, let's say. See, the ancient ones knew all about this stuff. They knew all about the sacred geometry of the body, the sacred geometry of the earth, the sacred geometry of the cosmos. Because you see, that's how everything came into being. It came into being through the one emanation that I've talked about before. And you can call that emanation the source, or you can call it the creator, you can call it God. but it's what manifests all the sacred geometry in the world and in our bodies and in the cosmos, and it's all connected. It's all connected. So where am I going with this? Well, let's talk about the magnetosphere that surrounds the Earth. Let's talk about that a while, because that's very significant for what I was talking about with the 2012 thing, okay? Now, every 25,000, I think it's 529 years or something like that. I'm not sure on the exact number right now, because I do this stuff right off the top of my head out of memory. But every 25,000 years plus, and there is an exact number. I think it's 529, 25,529, something like that, is the end of the precessional equinox, okay? And this correlates with the calendar, okay, of 2012. So we're in that window, we're in that time period. We're in a time period right now where things are happening with the planet. Okay, so in the past, if you go back millions of years, every 25,000 years, you have this end of the precessional equinox. And what happens then? Well, for the most part, what happened time and time again was what we would call a shift, okay, or the end of a cycle, or a shift in the magnetic poles of the Earth, of the planet. And so right now, what's happening and what has been happening is that there is a magnetic pole shift going on. It has been going on for a while now. And when that starts to happen, there's little grids that surround the Earth, magnetic grids. Some people might call them meridians. I don't know if that's a term that should be used. It's very similar. So these magnetic lines that go around the Earth have been shifting ever so slightly. And why do I say that? Well, because science has proved it. And in the aeronautical world, or, for pilots and people flying planes and air traffic control and that kind of stuff, they've noticed that they've had to readjust. And I'm a pilot, so I kind of am into this kind of stuff. They've had to readjust what they call an instrument landing approach ever so slightly, so that the airplanes don't go off course when they're flying in the clouds and they're coming down on a beam. Well, all this stuff is correlated with magnetic north, and so they have noticed that the Earth is in a situation, or the magnetosphere or the magnetic poles are shifting, and they've been shifting for a while. Well, what happens when they shift? Well, Edgar Cayce talked about, and Edgar Cayce was called the sleeping prophet, and he was probably right 99.99% of the time in his prophecies. I mean, he told about the Atlanteans and the Lemurians and all these ancient civilizations. Now, he predicted that there would be a magnetic pole shift. And I think that he said it was going to be sometime after 1998. So here we are. We're in 2021, and as indicated, there is a shift going on. But I think the shift that he was talking about and that he knew about and that the ancients, the Mayans and the Hopis and all these people knew about was like a complete flip. Okay, so when that happens, it's not going to be a subtle thing. Okay, it's not going to be like, oh, it's just changing a little and we'll have to readjust this and that on our charts. And no, it's not going to be that way at all. So in order to maybe demonstrate or illustrate what it's going to be like, so you ever take two magnets, okay, and you put these two magnets closer together, and as they come closer together, they repel each other, right? So you've done that before, two magnets, and try to, if they're not aligned right, they repel each other. And you push them closer and closer together. And at some point, the magnetic current becomes so strong that frequency or whatever you want to call it becomes so strong that one magnet goes boop and it just flips, and then next thing you know, it's stuck to the other magnet. It flips. Now see, when you have a magnetic pole shift, that's kind of exactly what happens. It happens not in when it shifts. Okay, there's a drift right now. I would call it a drift that is happening, but it's not a flip. Okay, when it flips, it's going to happen probably within 24 hours or less. Okay, that's the way it's going to play out. Now, when that happens, it's going to affect our bodies big time because we're part of Mother Earth. We're part of the cosmos. We're part of um, everything. Everything's connected, okay? So when the Earth that we're living on has a magnetic pole shift, it's going to affect us big time, big time. Now, what's going to happen? Well, in the past, some have actually gone close to extinction. Okay, so that's what happens, and it. Now, let me tell you why it affects us, because we have what we call a pineal gland, the third eye. Okay, right here, and that has a magnetic field around it, and then we have our light body, the Merkabah, which is a star tetrahedron that is in our aura, okay, and it is our light body. Now we haven't used these light bodies in thousands of years, most people, but there is a way to use them through meditation, a meditation that I practice. So when the shift happens, okay, it affects our magnetic properties in our aura or in our light body or in our spirit body. And that in turn is going to affect us on a physical level. And so it is said that if this was ever to happen, I mean, you could go to sleep tonight, wake up in the morning, it could be a whole different world. Because what happens? Well, it actually probably will punch us into another dimension. We're in the third dimension now, and that's going to shoot us, boom, right into probably the fifth dimension. So when that happens, it is said that you will go blind for 30 minutes, very possibly, completely blind, completely blacked out, can't see a thing. Why? Because of the process that our pineal gland and our sacred geometry that forms our body will go through. So if that does ever happen, you don't want to get freaked out about it. You don't want to. I'm just giving a warning, okay? Because why am I giving a warning? Well, I don't want this to seem apocalyptic, okay? I don't. That isn't my. That's not my purpose here. Is to scare people. My purpose is to inform people. Now, all the chaos that we see going on in the world today, all the chaotic events that we see going on in the world, and that would include all the stuff like the lockdowns and the masks and the pandemic and the I should say phony pandemic and the just intense situation on a political level and on a global level and even on a financial level, okay? All of this stuff is probably because things are shifting out of balance and there's a lot of chaos going on in the world. And we are actually on the verge of shifting into this fifth dimension through this magnetic pole shift. Is the magnetic pole shift going to happen? Is this just conjecture? Is it just thunder speaking wildly about things? No, this is something that you can research and come up with answers yourself. You can research it yourself and see that this is going on. Okay, this is something that is going to happen. Okay, and again, we're at the end of the cycle now. We've been at the end of the cycle. So that might be a reason, or it probably is the reason that everybody seems to be going batshit crazy right now. The planet as a whole. Now, when things happen on a very high spiritual level like this, and this is what I would call a high spiritual level, it affects everything. Okay, it trickles down into what we call the third dimensional reality. Because again, I said we're going to go into a fifth dimensional reality. Now, the Hopis talked about this. They said that we are going to go from the fourth world into the fifth world. And that they already came from the third world into the fourth world, but they're going, it is said, into the fifth world. So this is what we can expect, okay? And we have all this stuff going on, okay, where we have people are talking about, what's going on in the political field right now, the political football field. One person, an ex-president, seemingly to be for the Constitution, and the current president being part of the dark forces and that type of thing. This is all being bantered about out there. And now, having said that, are there people on Earth that are, let's say, more benevolent or more, I don't want to say chosen, maybe have a purpose, okay? Yes, that's definitely a possibility. But having said that, it really is almost much ado about nothing. I mean, it's something that if you want to get wrapped up in it, it's okay. If it makes you feel like you're aligned with a certain purpose, that's fine. But again, in this lower dimension, this third dimension, which really isn't real, it's not real. I've talked about this before. It's the Hindus call it Maya. They call it the illusion. It's just a play of light. It's almost like a virtual reality that we live in. And then within that virtual reality is the other realities that are being projected upon us through propaganda, brainwashing. This has been going on and on and on for hundreds of years, okay, thousands of years, okay. And I touched on it before if you want to review some of my previous videos about the false history of the world and what people think is real isn't really real because we've been lied to over and over and over again just about our origins, okay? And our origins definitely go back to ancient civilizations and the Anunnaki, which were the written about in the Sumerian scrolls. The Anunnaki were, I won't call them star brothers. I kind of like to use that term for more benevolent people. But they were extraterrestrial or from another world, another planet. Well, is that far out? No, that's not far out because if you research it, you find out it's true. Okay. And there's a strong correlation between biblical history and Sumerian history. Biblical history having copied most of the Sumerian accounts and put a little twist on it to suit them. So you really have to do research and you have to read between the lines. You have to understand what's going on. And just to run down a little bit of it that I probably have already run down in my previous videos. You had two factions in this original Anunnaki that were, one was benevolent, seemed benevolent, and the other one was malevolent, or was not really for mankind, wanting to enslave mankind, and then the other one was wanting to give mankind knowledge, okay, and help mankind in any way that he could, okay. And these were Enlil and Enki, and I've talked about this before, so I won't go into depth about it. You can go to a previous video. But that's what I mean when I say that you have to go way, way, way back. Uh, and research ancient history, and then you had Lemuria, which was a civilization off in the Pacific Ocean. Now I've been to Lemuria. I mean, when I was a pilot, I flew out to a place called the French Frigate Shoals, which is in the Hawaiian island chain, kind of. It's right where Lemuria sunk, and it's just a little landing strip out there with some Jacques Cousteau types that are doing experiments and stuff. Well, I've been out there, and the energy out there is palpable. There was an ancient civilization called Lemuria, and it sank, and then all the inhabitants went to Atlantis. And most of these people that were on Lemuria and Atlantis, I know I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but this is kind of necessary, were beings, that incarnate into this earth, transported themselves here, and had a fantastic civilization. But those civilizations no longer exist, and they sunk, into the ocean, and it all had to do with their purpose, whether it was a good purpose or a bad purpose, or whether they misused technology, much like we're misusing it today. The technology back then was fantastic. It was unbelievable. And even the Hopi and the Mayan people were very, very aware and actually in contact with sky beings, star brothers, they call them. The Hopi even aligned their Kiva doors to certain constellations because they knew. And so this is all connected, people. This is all connected. It's all a history of this planet. Now, when these cataclysms came in the past, some of them were like sometimes in the Atlantean era, there was a meteor that came down. So we're very vulnerable, okay, to outside phenomena. Now that outside phenomena is again, it's what I'm talking about here is the magnetic pole shift. And that's going to be, people talk about, people are waking up or that there's going to be a mass awakening. I hope so, because if there isn't, that is going to play into what happens to us as a species. And it's very, very conditional on how our mental processes are. One affects the other. Like I said before, as above, so below. As below, so above. That's a Hermetic law, one of the 7 Hermetic principles. And Hermes was a god known as Thoth in Egyptian mythology. I won't say it's mythology. I should say it's history. So our mental processes have a lot to do, and our awakening has a lot to do with what could how things could play out, okay? And our mental state of mind is very important. That's why it's so important right now in this period of time to try to raise your consciousness through meditation. And there's all kinds of meditations that you can do. Now, I started meditation back in 1986. That was my first journey, I should say. Actually, things have been happening to me ever since I was a kid that were kind of paranormal. But back in 1986 is when I made a concerted effort to learn certain things. And I started off with a discipline called Kriya Yoga. Now that discipline is about raising the energy through the spine, the Kundalini energy, the serpent energy. And no, serpent doesn't have a bad connotation. It's always had a good connotation, except later on when people twisted it. As you raise the Kundalini energy through different meditations and breathing techniques, things like this, you raise your consciousness. You burn off karma. You allow yourself to see through the third eye and the pineal gland instead of being stuck in the third dimensional reality. So I started off with that, and then as years went on, I studied every esoteric meditation that I could, including Taoist meditation, which includes the circulation of the microcosmic orbit, which is very similar to the Kriya thing. And Also, I have been doing what they call a Merkabah meditation. Merkabah appears in all kinds of cultures, even in the Jewish Kabbalah. And it's very esoteric, and basically what it is your Merkaba is your light body. Leonardo da Vinci knew about this. In fact, he even painted pictures about it, had drawings about it, and his mentor had drawings about it. And it's basically, like I said before, that star tetrahedron centered in the center of your aura, your light body, your spirit body. If you learn how to get in touch with that, then you can connect your pineal gland with your Merkaba. Now, the real big important thing here that I want to stress is you have to connect to your heart. Okay, you have to get into a love vibration and a heart vibration. In the heart chakra or energy center, there's 7. You got the crown chakra, the third eye, the throat, heart, the dantian right below the navel, and then the base chakra down by where your sexual organs are. So these all are important, but the heart chakra is where you should be living right now, because you don't want to be living in your mind, okay? Because there's too much chaos, there's too much propaganda, there's too much brainwashing, there's too much third dimensional crap going on up here in your mind. When you cease to think, when you do as the Taoists say, practice Mu Shin, or no mind, and you drop your consciousness to your heart chakra, which is a toroidal field, just as your aura is a toroidal field, then you start coming from the same place that the ancient, not Anunnaki, the ancient Mayan and the ancient Hopi and the Anasazi people were coming from and are still coming from. Talk to a Hopi elder and see if you don't feel that. Talk to a Mayan elder and see if you don't feel that beautiful, beautiful heart space that they're coming from. This is very important that you do this. This is very important that you learn how to do meditation techniques. Just breathing properly will help you, okay? So that would be the first thing that I would recommend, is that you learn how to breathe in a yogi type way, a yogic type way. And that would be breathing into the abdomen through your nose slowly to like a count of 8 or 10, and then breathing out and watching your breath. What does that mean, watching your breath? Well, simply it means watching your breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Well, why is that different than breathing? Well, because everybody that is walking around doesn't do conscious breathing. They do unconscious breathing, okay? You breathe without knowing it. You breathe at night, you don't know it then. But when you sit down in a meditation and you gather your energy, and you want to move that energy, well, it's done all from 1.5 inches below the navel. Okay, so you want to breathe slowly into your abdomen, and that means dropping your diaphragm and letting the air just flow into your lungs, and then raising the diaphragm to exhale the air. And this becomes a very, very relaxed procedure that if you do this for, say, even 10 minutes. If you sit there, keep your spine straight, do abdominal breathing, do conscious breathing, well, then you're going to start feeling things that you never felt before. You're going to start feeling the energy of the universe. You're going to start feeling the prana and the chi of the universe. And that is going to be felt by maybe some tingling sensations. You'll get tingling sensations in parts of your body. You'll start to feel your higher self. You'll start to feel benevolent spiritual forces. You might feel something like on the side of your head if somebody holds their hand and just lightly touches your hair. That's kind of like what the feeling is that you'll get when you start getting into proper meditation techniques. Now, this is all so important. It's very important because this is the way that you're going to transcend the coming change, the coming awakening. Now, again, I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about an apocalyptic view here. See, governments, religions have all bought into a biblical narrative, and that narrative was established by a dark brotherhood, believe it or not, eons ago, the same ones that I talk about, the Anunnaki and stuff. The one benevolent one that tried to free mankind was started an organization on Earth. It was started through him eons ago, and that organization had a good intention to give man knowledge and of techniques that could help him, but when the other side found out about it, they corrupted it. And so what happened is that we had a bunch of secret societies evolve out of that, and being like the Freemasons and organizations like that. Now, is everybody in those organizations bad? Well, no. A lot of people think, a lot of people are searching for that same original knowledge. But for the most part, when the Brotherhood got corrupted, originally the Brotherhood was good, but when the Brotherhood got corrupted, and that's the Brotherhood of the Snake, then they turned everything around and made everything seem just the opposite of what it was. You really have to understand this. This is very important. And the ways that they did it was they established an apocalyptic view of the world. In other words, most religions have a scenario where something real bad has to happen before something good happens. Something like, and they always relate it to Lucifer or what they call the devil or the dark, And this is all biblical stuff. It isn't very, very high metaphysical stuff. It's all propagated to get people into fear and into obedience and to live a certain societal way. You got to get this through your head, okay? Because this is how people have been brainwashed through the centuries and through the back thousands of years. This is how people have been programmed, okay? And so the governments, they do the same thing because they use the Bible, okay? They use the Bible and they use some of these apocalyptic views to further control people. Governments are connected with religion. Governments are religion. Governments are another form of a religion, okay? They have their hierarchy and their rules and regulations, and you must do this and you must do that. And they make all these laws. And these laws, they have no right to make. Just as when the Anunnaki came down here, they had no right to tamper with our DNA. They violated what we call a galactic law, in my opinion. But the laws that the governments are making are very similar to the laws that are in the Bible. One copies the other, okay? And some of these laws have gotten out of hand. There is no authority given to governments to rule people through their laws, okay? We all have natural rights, natural law. And basically that boils down to don't do harm to others, and others shouldn't do harm to you in any way, shape, or form, mentally, physically, or spiritually. Well, this is being done. It's being done, and you can see it being done through the secret societies, through the banking organizations. It's all being done, okay? And again, the Mayans and especially the Hopi had their prophecies concerning this, all right? Their prophecies. Now, instead of looking at the Great Awakening, okay, as an apocalyptic event, if you look at it from a point of view of being a natural cyclical thing, and if you're in tune with Mother Earth, and if you're doing some of the meditations that I've talked about, and if you're of a high mind and a high frequency, then none of this stuff is going to bother you. You're going to cast out fear. You're going to realize that all of this stuff that's going on is a big play. It's much ado about nothing. It's entities on the earth thinking too much of themselves, coming from the ego instead of the heart. So these are some things that you should think about. Okay, you should think about these things. Don't just shine me on or shine it on. I've been studying this stuff for a long time, and I always allow myself to be directed by the higher spirit, the higher consciousness. And I only say things that ring true, okay, to me. And when you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, this is exactly what's happening today. So don't have fear. Come from a metaphysical level. Come from a higher level. Come from raise up your consciousness to a high frequency, a high vibration, so that this stuff doesn't affect you, because you can get all wrapped up in the illusion. Okay, you can get all wrapped up in, but you say, oh, but we got to live in this world, and there's this going on, and there's that going on, and people are suffering. It's an illusion. Okay, it's like watching a horror show. It's like going to a movie and going into a theater and watching the play of lights on a screen. That's what it is. Okay. Here's another thing that I'll put right to the end of this video, is that you have control. You have more control than you think you do. Your world that you're viewing out there is something that you're creating. In fact, all mankind is creating that on a kind of collective consciousness level. But you still can create your own world by your own thoughts. As within, so without. As above, so below. So start thinking about the kind of world that you want to live in. Start thinking about the kind of consciousness that you want people to have. Start thinking about all of these good, positive things instead of buying into all the chaos that you see surrounding you. Be still and let the world form around you. And that world forms around you by your inner balance, your inner grounding, coming from the heart, coming from love. It's all about you because you are an emanation of the creative source. And it's above all these other entities or gods or gods in the Bible that have been talked about, or if you really want to get down to it, a lot of those gods in the Bible that people worship are actually a take on the early Sumerian gods, the Anunnaki and stuff like that. But the real God doesn't have a name. I call it Sophia sometimes or Sophia, because that's the Gnostic name. And Shekinah is the Jewish name, which is wisdom, pure wisdom. That created everything else, everything else. There is nothing above that, okay? So keep some of these thoughts in mind. Think about it. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. If there's something in here that troubles you or makes you wonder, well, do some research on it. Do some research and come to your own conclusions. But the best thing I can tell you to do is to practice these meditations, the Merkabah meditation and the Kriya and even any kind of yoga, breathing. Get into that stuff because that's your lifeline to and even if the magnetic pole, the Great Awakening, I call that the Great Awakening because it's going to be lights off, lights on. Lights off in your reality, you'll go completely blind, and then boom, if the lights don't go on then, well, then maybe you haven't been practicing centering and the meditations and practicing your higher consciousness. And whatever happens, don't fear it. That's all I got to say is whatever evolves, comes about, whatever cycle happens, don't fear it. Go with the flow. Stay centered in your heart and stay centered with love. Much love to you. I'll leave it there.